Let's just dive in. 1 Peter chapter 5, and we're going to look at a couple of verses that we've been working from, beginning in verse 1. To the elders among you, I appeal as a fellow elder and a witness of Christ's sufferings, who also will share in the glory to be revealed. Be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care, watching over them. Now, this was Peter's appeal. As though, in my mind, I hear him saying, hey, as one elder to others, here's my request. Shepherd God's flock. Shepherd the people that God has put in your care. And be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care, watching over them. Been trying to kind of get our hands around a little bit this idea of that doesn't define but identifies the role of an elder is to shepherd God's people, the flock given to your care, to watch over them. What does that look like? Generally, I think it looks similar from one congregation to another congregation, from one culture to another culture. But when you drill down into the specifics, that's where I think it begins to get different. In my life and work as a pastor and as a counselor, I've come to realize that I've been told this many times, I've read it many times over, but I believe it because not only of what I have read and studied, but because of my own experience, that the biggest, grandest, most significant needs in people's lives are the same, no matter what the culture, no matter what the specific societal issues and setting is. It's the same for people in the country as it is for people in the city, for people in North America and Africa. We all need a few basic things. But how we get those needs met may be different from one culture to the next. And in this idea of elders who watch over giving care to a flock put under their care, I think that could be different. You could have two churches in the same town, and the way they do that could be different. And now I'm not talking about the philosophical thing. See, I'll share again that I think a lot of times in churches we have kind of misidentified the function, the job description of elders with the character qualifications. Those don't change. I don't care what your culture is, what the time frame is. Those have been set. And although, honestly, I'm not sure I've ever known anyone to fully, completely, 100% match that character profile. It'd be the only one I know of, probably in all of history, whose life and character met to 100% this profile that Paul listed out for Timothy and Titus, is Jesus. Everyone else, we fall short to some degree or another. Now, here's the thing. Because we all are broken and imperfect, and we all have gaps, then the next question is, to what degree am I reaching for and growing into the maturity that is indicated with that character description? So don't that must never, ever be pushed aside. You see, you may have experienced this, and I have, where in all the churches I've served and been a part of, the elders have been men. And that's a whole big can of worms to open. I don't have the courage for it. So I'm not going to get into that, but I will just say there have been times when men have been put in the position of elder in congregations that I've served and been a part of, where the reason was because they were great, smart businessmen, and they had experience in decision making, and they seemed to be successful in their career. And so the thinking was they would make a great elder. They got into that role, and they were quickly in way, way, way over their head. And the reason is because they didn't have the personal depth, the spiritual maturity, and the emotional maturity that has to go along with that in order to be a shepherd of God's people and give care to the flock, to watch over these souls. And so they became frustrated. They were used to living in a world where you got things done. That was the agenda. And along the way, you develop people because that's how you got things done. You see, that's not bad or evil, or it's not a sin. It's a decent way to run a business. But the church, you see, the flock, God's flock, isn't really a business. It's an organization. Yes, all organisms are organized, and that makes them an organization. I can get into really kind of anal mode talking about these things, as I have demonstrated well. But the point I'm trying to make is, just because you know how to run a business well doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a really good shepherd. Now, there are guys who they have run their business well, and part of the reason that they run their business well is because they know how to shepherd people. They know how to care for, they know how to equip and train and empower people. They know a way to create a system of legitimate, consistent accountability. They know how to do that. That's a function that they're acquainted with. But just because they're a successful business person does not necessarily mean they'll automatically know how to shepherd God's flock. All right. So I'm kind of dancing around the perimeter here, but I haven't given it. So what is the job description of an elder? Okay. Here's the bottom line, I think. The congregations where they serve should offer them insight into what their job description should be. Here's how I think that works. I think the first job of the elder in any congregation is to discern the needs of the people in the flock that they're called to shepherd. What are their needs? Yes, there are these basic needs that every church in town would say our people have these basic needs. Okay. Beyond that, what do we discern prayerfully and thoughtfully, and then collectively, what do we discern to be the needs of the sheep in this flock, the people under our care? I think some of the needs that will never go away is that people need a sense of safety. emotional and physical safety. I mean, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's that's fundamental. Safety and security. Can we provide, are elders responsible for providing a safe environment? I think they are responsible to see that it is provided. And in our world, that could mean a whole bunch of different things. But see, that now we're down to an elder must discern what is appropriate and useful in their congregation setting for their flock. There are a plethora of other things, and I think I would, once these physical needs are addressed, and again, I don't think that the elders are responsible to necessarily take care hands-on personally all of these needs. I think they are responsible to see that they are taken care of. And so on that level, there's an issue of leadership and management that has to go into it. Once you get these physical needs addressed, then you can begin thinking more deeply and specifically about what are the spiritual needs. I believe that the greatest spiritual need that everybody in every congregation has is to grow deeper in their walk with Christ. Nobody is where they could be, and most people are not where they desire to be in their walk with Christ. There are some people who are content. Not going to make a judgment one way or the other on that, but I am going to say I basically don't want to finish my race, finish my life content with how my relationship with God is. I also don't want to be discontent, but there's that little fine razor's edge between those two where I still desire more. I think it is the job of the elders in a congregation to discern how can we help people grow more deeply in their walk with Christ, their faith in Him, their trust, to embrace His life and make it their own. How do we do that? Well, I think that addresses the preaching and teaching. I think it addresses the structure of the church, because there's some structures that are built in such a way that you never have to be anything more than a spectator, an observer. Okay? Then I want our structure to provide environments where people grow, develop in their faith and their walk with Christ. And one of the aspects of that is what kinds of content are we making available? How is that being made available? How often? Who's leading? See, it's kind of a big thing, but in that, one of the things that is it will always be a huge temptation is, do we have to control this, or are we watching over it as we empower and release people into functions that provide for reaching these objectives? So if I was a king of the world, I would sit down with every elder group. First thing I would do is I would say, eliminate the term elder board. You're not a board. I don't want you to be a board. I want you to be a team. Because shepherds don't organize themselves into boards. They shepherd the flock. They organize themselves as teams of shepherds, as families of shepherds. So organize yourself and think of yourself in that way, first of all. And then secondly, what are the primary objectives that you sense are of greatest importance for your flock right now? Let's think in terms of 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. You can't look too far ahead because we don't have a crystal ball. But if you're not thinking about a longer picture, a longer run, you'll go week by week by week, and you'll always be chasing after, and you'll be unprepared is what that comes down to. So how can an elder engage on this team in such a way that they help people develop and grow? Isn't that the bottom line? I mean, it's still very unspecific, but I think that's the main objective. I still, believe it or not, have one or two more things I want to say about the role and work of an elder, and I will do that next time. I've already blown past my time limit today, so I hope you connect with me again this way next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.